Hi, I'm Mindy with Astrology by Love. Today I am wanting to talk about Jeffrey Epstein and a little bit about his natal chart and current transits going on in the sky. Less than 24 hours ago, Jeffrey Epstein, a prominent businessman worth hundreds of millions of dollars, was found dead in his jail cell at what looks to be an apparent suicide. Since 2005, police in various states have been investigating him regarding sexual activity with underage girls. When I think about someone involved with secrets about sex, my mind thinks, I bet they've got a lot of planets in Scorpio. But surprise, Jeffrey Epstein doesn't have any planets in Scorpio. I took a look at his chart, and like I said, I wanted to talk briefly about the parts of his chart that make him known to us, why we're aware of him, and why he's famous. And I also wanted to talk about what's going on in the sky the past couple of months, the past few days, and what could have brought on so much emotional and intellectual pressure that he, allegedly killed himself. I unfortunately don't have his time of birth. If anyone does have that and wants to post it, that would be great. If I get that, I will update this video. But in the meantime, we'll continue here. So the first thing I wanted to point out about Jeffrey's chart. So this is his chart. The first thing I wanted to point out is the contact between Pluto in this sextile with Neptune and Saturn. So this is and plus this square that he has here also to the Sun and Mercury. So this is a pretty big reason why we know him right here. The reason Pluto, Saturn, and Neptune are all generational planets. And so typically, if you just had that standing alone in someone's chart, it would not affect them as much on a personal level. But because of the contact with the Sun and Mercury, Saturn and Neptune and Pluto affect him personally and come out in his personality. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Saturn and Neptune were conjunct between late 1952 and late 1953, as well as between late 1988 and the early part of 1990. So Neptune's the planet of illusion, fantasy, disillusionment, seeing things not the way that they are. And Saturn's the planet of rules, restrictions. He's known as the celestial taskmaster. He also has very, very high standards. So with the combination of these two planets, you typically see, one or two extremes. One is that you see negative thinking of oneself. And with the combination of Neptune and Saturn, however you think of yourself tends to bring that into your life. So you see people who are anxious, fearful of the future, very insecure, and then they, with the power of Neptune, readily bring that into their lives. On the flip side, this combination, you have high standards, high spirituality, and that readily brings abundance and prosperity into people's lives. So you've got those two. And the people born during this time can also fluctuate back and forth. So, during one period of time, you may be down and depressed and bad things are happening. You may get control of that. You may get control of your mind, flip it around, and then vice versa. So, what this generation thinks is super important. Now, what is interesting to note, though, is that Neptune in Jeffrey Epstein's chart was within a half degree of the star Spica. So there are a couple of fixed stars in the sky, and if they are near a planet, they can flavor that planet, and just cause it to, the energy in our life to play out a little bit differently. And so Spica, S-P-I-C-A, is said to have the energy of both Venus and Mars. the planets that rule the male and female sexuality, and also what we see as luxury and how we go about getting it. This is definitely a beneficial star, and when it's combined with Neptune, brings out the positivity and the abundance of Neptune. So Jeffrey Epstein and those born probably within a month or two of him have the star Spica influencing this. So it adds wealth and abundance to this placement as well. And like I said, with the contacts to Mercury and the Sun, this is definitely a beneficial thing. So Neptune and Spica conjunction is also sextile to Pluto at just over 1 degree of difference. So we talked about that a minute ago. That's right here. So, and I got this chart, I printed it off of astro.com. So real quick, Jeffrey Epstein's birthday is January 20th, 1953. If you want to go and print your own chart so you can follow along and see things a little bit better, pause, go do that and come right back. So anyways, like I said, there is 1 degree of difference. So Pluto brings power and determination to this positive combination between Saturn, Neptune, and Spica. It probably wouldn't be that positive possibly if Spica wasn't there, but it is. And so this brings determination to the high-minded, positive, luxurious thoughts, and then delivers it to that loose Sun-Mercury conjunction. Not necessarily delivers it, but forces it. Whenever there's a square, there is it's about a 90-degree angle between the planets, and it brings about tension and frustration. It's something you have to deal with. It's something you have to overcome. So, as I mentioned before, Neptune's the planet of illusion and fantasy, which, in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, can also be described as secrets. A lot of times, if there is confusion or secrecy, like I said, typically I think of Scorpio, but Neptune can deliver that as well. There's been many secrets around sex, but also around Jeffrey's wealth. He is claimed to be a billionaire, but has hidden his assets and money so well that only about a couple of $100 million can be found. That, or he's lied about it. Lying is also a trait of Neptune. So there you go. But with Neptune's contacts to Spica, I bet he actually does have the money, and I bet it's just well hidden. And over the next couple of weeks, as they get search warrants and start searching all his properties and everything, I bet we're probably going to be surprised by how much money he does have. A couple of $100 million is kind of nice, though. So anyways, like I said, let's get back to the Sun and Mercury loosely conjuncted. With the Sun-Mercury conjunction, this shows that Jeffrey's known for the way he thinks and communicates. This conjunction is square Saturn. It's square Saturn and Neptune. Typically, when Saturn is square the Sun, there are difficulties to be overcome, like depression, shyness, bullying. But with Neptune and Spica, these lessons and difficulties, they're still there. They're just not as negative, and there's a huge benefic outcome to it. So typically, if Saturn is square the Sun, that can be a harsh father with harsh lessons. It can also bring about an older mentor who's wise and can guide you in the ways. And also when Saturn and Neptune are square Mercury, that can create shyness, a little bit of depression. And one of the things that's recommended for overcoming that is to get on stage and practice public speaking. Wikipedia says that Jeffrey played the piano as young as 5 years old and went to music camps as a child. Typically at music camps, you get on stage, you get to perform. And so I'm sure that was probably part of his upbringing and helped him overcome shyness and negativity towards himself. Also, musical influence in someone's life a lot of times comes from Neptune. So there's Neptune playing that out as well. So back to Neptune and Spica contacts. So with Saturn and Spica influencing Jeffrey, he was known to be really smart. Wikipedia also says that at 21 he became a math and physics teacher. So you've got to be smart to do that alone. And then just over 2 years later, Alan Greenspan, whose kids went to the school that Jeffrey taught at, offered Jeffrey a job at Bear Stearns. Alan Greenspan would be the wise mentor coming in. That's the Saturn square sun influence right there, with the benefits of Spica. I don't know too many math and physics teachers being offered jobs at high-end financial firms. So obviously Jeffrey Epstein was more than smart. With Mercury and Spica, he was probably also a very smooth talker, and I imagine that probably took him just as far as his smarts did. And that makes sense with the loose Mercury Sun conjunction squaring Saturn and Neptune, also receiving that energy from Pluto. So we know Jeffrey from his wealth and also his secrets, but now also his troubles with sexual activities with minors. So over here in this part of his chart, right here, the blue lines, we can see the abundance of lovers, prostitutes, and victims coming from this. So this is his loose Mercury Sun conjunction, also touching Chiron, that sextiles Venus and Mars, and then also has a sextile to Jupiter, another sextile to Uranus, and then Uranus trines Mercury, Venus and Mars right here. So this is a very tight Venus-Mars conjunction. When Venus and Mars are conjunct, there's a combination of sex appeal and being able to get what it is that you want. So with this contact to Mercury, sex was definitely on Jeffrey Epstein's mind. And when we look over to Chiron, that's just beside Mercury right here at 15 degrees. This Venus-Mars conjunction is 16 degrees. Chiron is 15 degrees. And so that's a really close and tight contact. So this allows him to, the Venus-Mars conjunction allows him to get what he wants. And, Chiron is the place in our chart where we are wounded or sick or have struggles. And so with its contact with Mercury and then going over to Venus and Mars, you can see some struggles there with the way that he thinks about sex and getting what he wants. Chiron is also the place, that we're able to heal others. And, from reading his information on him, Wikipedia and everything, it's obvious that I don't know that he healed others, but I know that he wounded them in the way that he is wounded and shared what he did, although it's not necessarily right, but he shared what he did with others, which, is one of the reasons we know him. So now when we add this to the somewhat loose sextile to Jupiter, and Jupiter is a positive planet. It's known to bring, it's known as a benefic planet, and it expands and grows everything that it touches. Even if something's negative, the negativity is slightly lessened, but it's still expanded. So it won't be as bad, but you'll have a lot of not quite as bad. So Jupiter here, and Jupiter's at 11 degrees. This is at 16 degrees. So this is a looser, but Jupiter is expanding this sexuality going on here. And then as well, it has, this Venus-Mars has a trine to Uranus, almost exact. So Uranus is the planet of chaos, destruction. It's a lover of freedom. It loves to have a freedom from rules. So Uranus doesn't think rules apply to it. And, we can see where Jeffrey's reckless and non-traditional sexual behavior comes from by looking at this part of his chart. One other thing to note is that not only is Uranus, it's, chaotic, freedom-loving ways to Jupiter, but the Mars-Jupiter conjunction, it's also in a pretty exact opposition to the place where Chiron is. So this creates a sort of loop. So here is Chiron right here, and here's Uranus, and Uranus is opposite that. So, and then once Chiron, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, or Uranus are contacted in any way in the sky, they kind of set each other off in this loop. And so that was a big portion of Jeffrey Epstein's life. And maybe some days it didn't play out physically. Maybe some days it was only in his mind, only in his energy, but it was constantly being set off over and over again, and that was something that he was having to deal with. So now let's discuss some planetary happenings that have recently occurred. On July 2nd, 2019, a solar eclipse occurred at 10 degrees 38 minutes in the sign of Cancer. Eclipses cause a sort of death and rebirth in the areas of our chart that they touch. So, everybody's got, a sliver of their life ruled by every sign. So everyone is affected by eclipses. Jeffrey Epstein is no different. What an eclipse does is it takes away what is not working in that area of your life. What you've been ignoring, what you've been neglecting, that comes to the forefront to deal with it. And it's a time of upheaval and turmoil. Things get brought to light that need to be dealt with, need to be exposed, or need to be forgiven, need to be let go. Eclipses are a tumultuous time. And so the eclipse on July 2nd in Cancer did affect Jeffrey Epstein's Uranus. So, like I said, it was at 10 degrees and 38 minutes of Cancer. His Uranus is at 15 degrees, 55 minutes of Cancer. So it affected that, which, started this loop we talked about. But more importantly, it affected, and it was actually an exact, 100% exact square to his moon. So the moon in our chart is our planetary bodies. It's our emotions. It's our feelings, how we deal with our emotions. And a square is, like I said, around a 90-degree angle. This was an exact 90-degree angle. And so it brings up anxiety and tension. Typically, if the sun was just transiting at 90 degrees, you would feel anxiety and tension anyways. There would be something that you'd probably want to change, something you'd be thinking about, something you'd be dealing with. But there might not be any actual physical manifestations. It might just be an internal thing. But when it's an eclipse, something definitely has to change. And, this was a total eclipse. So emotionally, on some level, Jeffrey was feeling this. And he knew that something had to change. Maybe he was seeing things clearly. Maybe any sort of hope or positivity was taken from him. I don't know what he went through on July 2nd, but I know it squared his moon, and I know he was feeling it. Next, on July 16th, at 24 degrees of Capricorn, we experienced a lunar eclipse. While this was not a total lunar eclipse, it still brought about changes in its energy and felt right between Jeffrey Epstein's Sun and Mercury. And so, here's his Sun, here's his Mercury in that loose conjunction. And the moon at that time was in Capricorn, and the lunar eclipse happened right between it. So both, the sun represents your ego. So his Sun and his Mercury, are how we think, how we speak, was affected. Something was changed, something shifted. And so with these planets' secondary contacts to Jupiter causing expansion, Pluto causing obsession, I really wouldn't want to have been in Jeffrey Epstein's head in July. I really wouldn't have. I think probably any bit of positivity was definitely gone and out of there. Anyway, so I am reading this on August 10th. I'm recording this on August 10th of 2019. Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell around 6:30 this morning. I have the transits of the planets from yesterday shown here around his chart. So this is, his natal chart and around the exterior here are where the planets were yesterday. So, Mercury was at 27 degrees of Cancer. So that's right here. That's opposite his natal Mercury. So when that happens, we can feel a little paranoid. We can feel depressed, definitely anxious. Mercury was actually opposite his natal Mercury exact on June 19th. Mercury went retrograde, which is when it appears to move backwards in the sky, and goes back over issues so that we can rethink about them, re-deal with them. If we didn't get it right the first time, Mercury retrograde's the time to get it right the second time. We're kind of forced to deal with this stuff. And so, that's been happening to everybody in July, but also Jeffrey Epstein. So he's been going back through things in his mind. So, and so Mercury was near his Uranus, opposite his natal Mercury, and on August 1st, Mercury went direct. And so when Mercury went forward, he was able to, it was getting away from his natal Mercury, so that opposition to the natal Mercury, that causes confusion, depression, anxiety, and all that was lessening, and he was seeing clearly. And so, as we all were, when Mercury goes direct, you start feeling better, things start smoothing out. And so, also wanted to point out that Saturn, the planet of restriction, was right on top of his natal Chiron. So that's kind of painful. Saturn, is restricting the wound. It's depressing the wound. It's causing problems. That's hard. And then also Pluto was transiting his natal Mercury. So Pluto transits are some of the most difficult that you can go through. There are definite life-changing events that happen anytime Pluto is transiting any of your personal planets. And Jeffrey Epstein is no different. Pluto's the planet of dark obsessions, death, and rebirth, sitting right on top of Jeffrey's Mercury. And then the changes of his mind and emotions for the eclipses in July. And then the clear thinking that came about from Mercury moving forward and opposing his natal Mercury. This all could definitely set the stage for suicide. However, Neptune's influence over Jeffrey's, natal contacts, and also something I noticed. So Neptune is also in line with his natal Mars and Venus. So Neptune can cause suspicions around someone's death, can cause confusion around someone's death, can cause us not to see things clearly in those areas as well. And as of right now, they're still not 100% sure it's a suicide. With his cellmate and him not being on suicide watch anymore, they're just not sure. And I'm sure this will all come to light in the next couple of weeks. But, right now it's still a mystery. And, his death has got that Neptune theme surrounding it. And so one last thing I wanted to talk about. Mars is also in the sky. And it's moving about. This past Wednesday, it came into direct contact with his, right here, with his natal Pluto. So this was just 3 days ago. When Mars conjuncts Pluto, it gives you a burst of energy, almost anger, like you are going to accomplish your task regardless, no matter what. So with all this swirling around in Jeffrey Epstein's head, and then the contact from Mars, this is definitely, kind of looks like a suicide in the making as far as astrology goes. But once again, time will tell. So, and I wanted to say that I believe no one is 100% bad or good. The mystery of Jeffrey Epstein will continue to unfold over the coming weeks, and with this much money and this many victims, probably over the next several months. Maybe time will show Jeffrey Epstein in a more positive light with more good than bad. But right now, unfortunately, that's not what is being shown. I send blessings and positive light to all the victims of all of these tragedies, all the survivors of these tragedies. And I've left a link below to the Wikipedia page. Um, if you want a personal reading, my email's down there as well, and I'd love to do one for you. My website will be up soon. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. So, thank you for watching.